couple of stints in the morning. We saw riders broadly syncing with one another, coming in for a pit stop and you know, breaking up their morning. We'll find out as we go on through this session what exactly the riders are doing and what the program looks like. But FP2 then gets underway, and just seeing the riders making their way out onto the circuit. This is Axel Bassani. Bassani on the back foot compared to his teammate at the start of the weekend, because he was only 17th fastest in FP1, but again 1 second covering Alex Lowe's P1 to Bassani down in P17. So as always in World SBK, not too much to choose between them.
Yeah, short lap around here obviously with only a 126, and we'll be down into the 25s before the end of the weekend, and even the 24s in the Super Bowl session, but that also means that a lot of riders stay pretty closely matched.
Jari Montella making his way round, obviously newly confirmed for next season. Montella finished FP1 with a strong lap right at the end. He was running further down the order, but set a lap that puts him into 7th position with the final effort, and that pushed Jonathan Ray down into 11th. So a fair number of Ducatis up in those lead positions, from Petrucci, Iannone, Sam Lowes, Jari Montella. Ryan Vickers having a good morning for him. He'll be really pleased for that. And then Scott Redding up in those top 10 places as well. So it does look like one of those weekends where the Ducatis are going to have opportunities, little doubt about that.
Yeah, definitely, and for Ducati, they know that this is probably going to be a bit more reminiscent to what we saw at, say, Phillip Island earlier in the season, when they really were the bike to beat, and that should be the case once again this week.
As the riders make their way around on circuit, we pick up Alvaro Bautista, and we've said it previously, for him and for Jonathan Ray, 2 world champions in the Superbike World Championship. This is an important weekend. Bautista obviously still waiting to know what his future is going to hold. Clearly, the announcement's already been made from his side, actually, that Aruba wouldn't continue in their relationship with him as a factory rider for next season. More news obviously continues to filter out, but his focus in the recent days and in the build-up to this round as well has sort of been about that weight penalty, that he feels that's the thing that has really cost him. And obviously a rider's never going to latch on to, oh, my own performance is dropping. They're always going to find a reason that they can have 2 world titles and then frankly not be competitive at the front as Alvaro is this year. But that's the thing he's been mainly focusing on, rather necessarily than how he's going to do something next year to bring himself back into the mix.
Yeah, it's been interesting, because for the first half of the season, up until the announcement by Ducati, he's not talked about the weight penalty. He's not talked about it at all. He's always said, I've moved on past that. I don't care about the weight penalty. This is the situation I have. And now suddenly he's looking, and it's almost that crutch again for him. And he can't be like that. He's got to just focus on what he can control.
But is that coming from him starting to talk to manufacturers and understand with each manufacturer how much weight he's going to have on the bike? And it is as he finds that out with each manufacturer, that's adding to his frustration, that he feels the problem's only going to get worse and potentially more weight when if he moves to a different manufacturer next season.
Yeah, it's definitely the big factor for him, because when you look at the fact that he's having to deal with these situations, it means that he's suddenly realising what he has if he's on the Ducati. The Ducati, by all accounts, is a few kilos over the weight of some of the other bikes, which would mean with other bikes, he'd then have to carry more weight than he has to with the Ducati. And these factors are all going to play a role for him, but he needs to be able to figure a way to make it work, because ultimately he can still make it work with that bike. It's just not working the way that he needs it to work right now.
Could a new Ducati with an independent team be an option for him? We'll come back on that in a couple of moments' time, because as you can see, Axel Bassani is out in the gravel trap. I said it hadn't been the best of mornings for him. He was down the order. Had got off to a flying start though in FP2 with his fastest lap time of the day. But as you can see, the marshals wheeling the bike away after a spill for Axel Bassani in the first 5 minutes here of FP2.
Yeah, and that's a fast place to come off as well. They're up at turn 7, and when you lose it through there, the bike travels a long way, and you could see there for the Bimota team, it just cartwheels a little bit, and in all likelihood has to get that bike back to the pits on the service road, and then a bit of repair work to be done. That might be the end of the day for Bassani.
Yeah, bike already being wheeled around on the outside of the circuit that will literally, McLean's is the opposite side of the track and the opposite corner of the track, isn't it, to the start-finish straight. So I don't think he could actually be further away from where that bike needs to get back to. So it's going to cost him a fair amount of time in this section.
Yeah, it will, and for Bassani, you can't really afford to lose that track time.
This is Tito Rabat, obviously new signing this weekend, starting for MIE Honda, and fourth different manufacturer now for Tito Rabat in the World SBK, becoming an experienced campaigner in the sort of twilight of his career, as Tommy Bridewell makes his way through. Both Honda's both first appearances of this season for their manufacturer. Obviously Rabat earlier on in the season started the campaign with Moto X before being replaced by Michael Ruben Rinaldi. On to the start-finish straight then, just past 5 minutes in free practice 2. Let's take a look at the riders who have improved this afternoon so far. Danilo Petrucci leads the way in this session, 1:26.7, so closing in on the fastest times of the leaders from this morning. He was fourth fastest, remember, in FP1, 4/10 down on P1. So he leads the way in this session. Bulega and Lowe's up in those top positions again. Razgat Lioglu hasn't actually set a flying lap time in FP2 as yet, so that's one to keep an eye on. Then it's Andrea Locatelli and Axel Bassani, who we've just seen have his spill. They're rounding out the top 5. And as for riders who have improved, Petrucci I've already mentioned, Locatelli, Bassani I'd already mentioned, Redding, Gerloff, Vickers, Van der Mark, Ray, Bridewell, Sofoglu and Egerton. So fair number of riders have come straight out. First 5 to 7 minutes of free practice 2, immediately improving on what they did this morning.
Yeah, most riders out there on that X tyre, you'd imagine, as well, compared to this morning when we were using that harder rubber.
As we ride on board, making our way through the final turn, Nicolo Bulega is over 0.3 of a second up on Danilo Petrucci's fastest time. This looks like being the fastest time of the day so far. It's a 1:26.342, and 0.2 of a second faster, in fact, than anyone went in FP1 earlier on today. So Nicolo Bulega setting out his stall, while Toprak Razgatlioglu, as we saw, is still in his pit box.
Yeah, we saw Toprak in there. Usually for BMW, if that's the case, and I'm sure we'll get an update from Anthony at some point, but typically they make a change and then they go out. Toprak does basically a siding lap to check and assess the update, and then he'll go out and do his long run.
A little bit of good news for Alvaro Bautista as well. New personal best for him, a 1:27.234. So still 9/10 slower than Nicolo Bulega, but 9th place in this session for Alvaro Bautista and 13th on the combined time. So at least he found something, because from what I understand, he was a little bit frustrated after FP1 earlier on today.
Yeah, and certainly for Bautista down the order this morning, you can understand his frustrations, but you've got to be able to try and find solutions and try and find progress, and at least for him, already found a big chunk of time compared to this morning. But that's Bulega
Nicolo
down.
Bulega down in the first 10 minutes of FP2 here at Donington Park. He's trying to lift the bike up and out of the gravel trap.
That's the S's there, it looks like. Probably clipped the curb on the way in. Typically that's what causes the crash through this section. But we'll wait and see what happens for Nico as he comes in. Just loses it very early, but just trying to carry that bit too much speed through there, and Bulega goes down. Won't be too much damage done to the bike, but again, it's another one of those little reminders that even whenever you're riding as well as Bulega is this year, you're always on that limit. Yeah, let's not forget Most, obviously, at the start of the weekend. That was that much more dramatic than this spill here at Donington Park, but we remember from Toprak Razgatlioglu last season that Friday doesn't count for anything, but it can leave you in a really precarious situation. Yeah, exactly, and it's the situation where you miss out on the running with that X tyre to be able to know the tyre life, to be able to do the long run. We'll obviously wait and see if Bulega is able to get that bike restarted, get back to the pits, and then get back out again.
So yellow flags out for the moment. Obviously Marshall's just on the outside of the circuit trying to clear Nicolo Bulega's bike out of the way. Short run at very least back to pit lane through there. The shortcut, effectively the bottom loop, the Melbourne loop, can be cut out effectively, so they're not too far away. But bad news for Nicolo Bulega, particularly just after setting the new fastest lap time of the day.
Yeah, and for Bulega, that 26.3, a decent lap time. He was up by another 1/10 of a second, so he was pressing on. But it'll take away some information for him. It's not going to take away too much confidence for the weekend, though.
Alvaro Bautista, back to him and his future, because really of the riders currently on the grid, the biggest interest is in seeing what does Alvaro Bautista do, what does Jonathan Rea do. We said that Toprak and Bulega obviously were the first pieces that had to be put into place. Then the biggest interest next is Alvaro Bautista, you'd have to say, and still so many possibilities for a rider who's been a double world champion, and even at the veteran stage of his career and passing 40, there's got to still be interest in him, because he's one of the few riders who's been able to make a big difference in recent seasons and obviously be a regular race winner as well.
Yeah, and I think if you're an independent Ducati team, you want to throw the option out on the table that you can get Alvaro Bautista, because he will give you the option to try and challenge at the front, try and win races. Obviously, it's been a tough time for him at the moment on the V4R, but you still want to see what he can do on it. And then the other option is to go to Honda. There will be talk of, you can see Toprak really pushing on down into the loop there, but there will be talk of, can he replace Razgatlioglu? It's very difficult to see how his riding style can work with that BMW. Maybe it can work with the Honda. We've already seen him go there in the past. The Honda we talked about in FP1 is the interesting prospect, and you'd love to see Honda just aim for the stars, go for Rea and Bautista together.
Superb. Toprak Razgatlioglu then crosses the line. First flying lap of FP2, 1 minute 26.757. I think, Anthony Nelson, you've got a little bit more on Toprak and his delayed start to this FP2.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, Alex, the only change they did make was that Toprak went out for his installation lap on the SC0 tyre, and he's just gone out now for this longer stint, or what we expect to be a longer stint, on the X tyre. So whether it was just a case of getting the feeling for the track on the 0 tyre before changing to the expected plan, or whether he figured there was a change of plan needed in regards to that rear tyre, I'm not entirely sure. But that was the only work that I could see from my perspective that they were doing on the bike when he came in.
Yeah, wonder whether your assertion previously that he was just doing an installation earlier on, he might just use a used tyre for that and not bother to make the change until he's sure and then come back out. So it could be a mixture of everything there that we've said.
Yeah, making a change and then going out in the same tyre you used this morning gives you that comparison to what it felt like this morning, and then you're able to go out and do the longer run. So for Toprak, probably nothing outside of what was planned for BMW. Obviously for Bulega, very unplanned crash, but we were able to see that at least he's got the bike restarted and trying to roll his way back to the pits there. But half an hour left in the session, a little bit of repair work. You'd imagine that by the time he gets back, hopefully it's 10 minutes and then you're able to get back out.
Yes, well, bike is already there, as you can see, man bringing it in, and looking decidedly worse for wear because of the gravel marks and dust and so on. We'll see how long it does take for the team to rectify that. But a session that started with a delayed start, let's say, for Toprak, and at that moment, Nicolo Bulega set a new fastest lap of the day. It's now swung the other way because Toprak's out there lapping within himself and quite comfortably, and now it's Nicolo Bulega picking himself up out of the gravel trap. So how quickly things can turn even on a Friday here in Wales.
Yeah, and that's the one thing with the one bike rule as well. That's the importance of getting the bike back to the pits. And Bassani's bike, we're just seeing on the timing screens, back in the paddock now as well. So Bimota will be able to try and start getting some work done on that bike. But the clock ticks down very quickly, and time is the enemy in a session like this after you've had an incident.
Another new personal best last time around for Alvaro Bautista. Bautista, now that he knows Ducati don't intend to retain him for that factory ride next season, he has been consistent that he wants to continue on next year, and you do wonder whether if he knew that the option wasn't going to be taken up from the other side, whether he would have been quite so vocal about his plans to continue next season, because after a year like this one where he hasn't had a race win, where he hasn't qualified well really, where he seems to have taken another step back after already dropping behind his new teammate Nicolo Bulega in the championship standings last year, whether many riders might have said, you know what, 2 years without a title and losing your factory ride, maybe that's the time to move on. But he still seems to be enjoying himself, even if at the moment that must be tempered by a great deal of frustration.
Yeah, enjoying himself in theory, and then in practice frustrated about how the season's going. But for him, he knows that he's still got the potential to be a front runner, and he believes that to his core and wants to go out and prove it.
I guess what I don't want to see is a year on an independent bike that sort of peters out his spell in World SBK. I'm thinking, you know, the extra year for Chaz Davies that didn't go to plan. I'm thinking about Marco Melandri's comeback attempt on the Barney Ducati, or, you know, even Michael Ruben Rinaldi's last season. There's plenty of precedent for riders who've tried to make that switch, and Scott Redding as well, from a factory Ducati to another bike, and then it's just sort of dwindled their career. And it would be a shame for that to happen to Bautista with 2 titles under his belt.
Yeah, and the dominance that we've seen from him as well. But time doesn't wait, and for a lot of riders, opportunities change, and teams, they look to the future, and you get to a certain age and it gets harder and harder to justify bringing in a different rider. And for Alvaro, it then becomes, for sponsors, is he attractive? And maybe he is, maybe he isn't, and that becomes important for an independent team. I still think that if you've got Bautista out there in the right set of circumstance, the right situation, you've still got a very fast rider that can be at the front of the field. For an independent team, that's more than good enough. For a factory Ducati team, for the Aruba team, he's not quite able to get the results that they need to justify having him there. But for an independent Ducati team, his results would be manna from heaven.
Yeah, it's more that the results aren't enough to justify the bill for the factory team than anything else, because they've got a rider who is delivering race victories almost every weekend, and they've got another who is delivering some podiums, maybe not as many as he would like, but when the circumstances are right, he'll be the third man behind Jabik 2. Obviously, Toprak moves on next season, so suddenly a lot of riders think they might have a chance. But even to get back on par with Nicolo Bulega, it's a big task for Alvaro Bautista.
Yeah, and for Alvaro, we're a year and a half into Bulega coming to the team. Alvaro still hasn't out-qualified him, and that shows the raw speed that Bulega has compared to Bautista. And that's probably been the most damning thing, really, because Superpole's always been a bit of an issue for Alvaro, but never to the extent that it is now. And the championship is just getting more and more competitive, and by Sunday evening, Bautista has found a way to get fast enough to be able to be back on the podium and still come away with good points from a weekend, but he can't get there early enough in the weekend for an official team.
Yes, and one does wonder as well, much as he said on Thursday that he doesn't close the door to being on a Ducati next season and so on, does it make sense for him as well? Because if you know that Nicolo Bulega is the guy who is going to start as the favourite at the beginning of next year, you know that he's beaten you in 2 years when you're on the same machine. If you go to an independent team, it's only going to be harder to get anywhere near Bulega. So you wonder whether Honda is actually the thing that makes the most sense, because he's done more on that bike with his 3 podiums and those occasional performances. You think about the Catalunya round, for example, when he was on the Honda, than most riders have managed. And maybe what they've learned and what he's learned in the interim brings him a little bit further forward. And certainly, as we said previously, there's not too much to lose for either him or for Honda if he is determined to continue on next season.
Yeah, and then the other side of the coin as well, as we know that obviously there'll be a new Ducati next year, but it's only going to get slowed down with the rules and regulations that come in. The Honda, with all of their super concession parts and in all likelihood retaining them for next year, that package can only improve, and that could be a factor as well for Alvaro, where you're able to look at it and say, I can make this package better, I can get it to work for me.
Unless he feels that the new bike could be a leveler between himself and Bulega that gives him a chance over a season, and it's worth giving that 1 year to see if the new bike suddenly shakes up the order, because remember how well he did immediately at the start of 2019. If the bike's right from day one, then Bautista will take advantage of it.
Yeah, definitely. We just saw Iker Lecuona run off the track there as well. This is a bit embarrassing right now for the Honda team, because Tommy Bridewell's up there 15th fastest on the development bike. Lecuona is 18th. Xavi Vieira is 22nd, and then we've got the MIE Hondas of Acrobat and Ivo Lopez in 23rd and 24th. So the fastest Honda rider right now is Tommy Bridewell, coming in as a wild card.
Yes, and unfortunately for Vierke in particular, a 10th ahead of Tito Rabat first weekend on the bike. So yeah, there's a fair amount there to be done. It has to be said that this has never been a good round as far as as Honda are concerned. But as you say, when you've got the guest, let's say, ahead of all of the regular bikes in the championship, it's not ideal. But what do you think it is about this circuit that makes it so difficult for Honda? Because they came here already almost knowing that this was going to be a bit of a weak link for them, as it was last year.
Yeah, Honda's in a bit of a tricky situation. Yamaha were in this situation probably about 7 or 8 years ago with the R1, where you knew going to certain tracks it was just going to be very tough for them. Yamaha managed to round the package out to be an awful lot more competitive everywhere, and then obviously with Toprak able to win the World Championship. But for Honda, we've just seen it where at some places that bike is working, and in other places it just doesn't seem to have that potential. And that's where it's really important to have Bridewell and the development team here as well, to be able to give you that insight and see what they're able to do. Because it was interesting whenever they did their first test together that the World Superbike regulars opted to make their bike more like the development bike in terms of electronics and different settings.
Yeah, we've got to caveat it obviously as well with the experience that Bridewell has here at Donington Park, and clearly at a circuit where we always say a rider can make a difference and so on, when you've got that little bit of an edge in terms of track knowledge here, then clearly that's going to work in your favour. And it also has to be said that we don't know what tyres are being used out there or what any of the riders are doing. But certainly from the headline times, that's a decent effort from Bridewell, 1:27.5 for him. Meanwhile, Lecuona 1:27.988 and Vieque 1:28.347. We're seeing super slow motion here of Alex Lowes, and always when we come to Donington, it's a bit of a reminder of the history of the championship, which obviously was inaugurated here back in 1988, and Bimota was a foremost name in the first 2 seasons of the championship, certainly, and then intermittently since then as well. First podium since their return last time out, back here at Donington Park this weekend, fresh from their podium last time out, and then 1000th race next time out in Balaton Park. So yeah, a lot of historical interest and significance in promotion.
Yeah, and it's going to be really cool to see that 1000 race as well next time out in Balaton. And for a lot of the riders, obviously Donington is a place that we've always visited, so everyone knows this place inside out. And for a lot of riders, it's quite a challenging place as well, because there's so many blind corners, there's so many off-camber corners, and that means that you have to have a lot of confidence. You also have to have the bike working well, and if the bike is in the right window, you can see surprising results here.
1,000 races for World SBK must be about 500 for you, very least, Steve, as we continue on.
This is my 300 race actually this weekend. And the mark ran off there at turn 1 as well, which is regional.
Free practice 2 heads past the halfway mark. The 2 leaders in this session are in. Nicolo Bulega 1:26.342. Obviously we've seen what's happened to him. Danilo Petrucci 1:26.7 is the next fastest. Toprak Razgatlioglu's been into the pits. He's making his way back out now for his second proper stint. Then it's Locatelli and Bautista back in the pits as well. Alex Lowes going for a longer run. The pace has dropped off now at this stage. But it was a 1:27.49 last time around. Into the 1:20.60s for his fastest time. Sam Lowe, Zach Selvasani, Garrett Gerloff and Scott Redding round out your top 10.
Yeah, down into Redgate here with Toprak, and this is where Donington really is so unique. You can see here as we head down towards Hollywood, down towards the bottom of the Craner curves, so many corners linking one into the other, so fast around here as well. 3rd, 4th gear in this section, come down to the old hairpin, knock it back a gear to 3rd, come through here, you're now building up, but you're climbing all the way as well, up through turn 6 and then up towards turn 7 at McLean's as well. But look at how much the track has risen up towards this point, and from this point on, again, you have to come back down the hills at the end of the lap. You can see up towards Coppas, this is the blind double apex right-hander. You can see here for Toprak, peels in very early, then drifts out wide, then comes back across to that inside curb, down the back straight, and this is where you're trying to control that wheelie. The big wing on the BMW helps a lot. Breaking down in towards the foggy S's, down into 2nd gear. They've reprofiled this many years ago to make it a lot faster, make it a lot more open, but it's so easy to make a mistake through there. We already saw Bulega get caught out. Down in towards the Melbourne Loop, this is the one part of the track nobody likes, but it's so difficult for the riders down through here as well, because you scrub off all that speed, easy to have a small crash through there. Down in towards the last corner at Goddard's, off camber through here. It's an overtaking opportunity if someone makes a mistake. It's also where we've seen a lot of mistakes made that have cost other riders as well. And For Toprak, you'd see as he comes across the line, just finishing off that lap of 27.0, so about a quarter of a second slower than his fastest time in this session so far. But for Razgatlioglu, still just building up into this session, hasn't been busy. He's only done 9 laps so far.
Watch the replay images of Toprak Razgatlioglu. Does love to get the back tyre off the ground. And heavy braking zones, obviously the last 2 corners, turn 11, the Melbourne hairpin, and then turn 12, Goddards. And much as the riders feel it's too much of a sharp contrast to the rest of the circuit, turn 11 is one of those places where, you know, it's probably the best opportunity of the lap to make a conventional looking overtake. And then turn 12, as you've said, an action hotspot with so many famous incidents and collisions down the years.
Yeah, and turn 11 is an interesting one, because if you're trying to be as fast as you can through that, you leave the door open. And then it's just a question of whether or not anyone jumps in to attack you.
20 minutes remaining in free practice 2, and it's back down to the pits with Anthony Nelson.
Thanks, Alex. I'm here with Paul Dennin, Pata Yamaha team principal. And Paul, tell us a bit about how this session has been going, the feedback from both of your riders.
On Locker's side, we've made a good step with balance of the bike and a little bit improved the rear grip, but we need more rear grip. He was riding around with Danilo there, who was going very well, and that was the problem we had, was exit onto the back straight and acceleration up the hill through Starkey's rear grip was our biggest restriction after a few laps. So we've just tried something in the bike now to try and take a step there.
On Johnny's side, this is a huge weekend, I think it's fair to say, given his results last year and given the dynamic inside the team.
Yeah, the difficulty is sort of defusing that, and actually, you know, because it's the first weekend where he's been properly, fully fit. Mazzano is nearly there, but not quite, but is physically ready now. But these other guys have got so many more kilometres of racing mileage under their belts this season. He's obviously good enough to take the step straight back towards the front group, but I get the feeling he's almost putting too much pressure on himself, and yeah, he just needs to trust in himself and ride as he knows he can ride, for fun rather than for pressure, and I think things will go better like that.
Well, obviously it's a bit unfair given the injury you alluded to, and that he's coming back to full fitness right here in Donington. But is it kind of a make or break weekend for the relationship with the team? Because we know obviously that it's a time of the year when Yamaha's speaking with people, there are rumours they're speaking with Moto2 riders, with riders around the World Superbike paddock, himself as well, as the rumours of conversation with the manufacturers. So how important is it?
I guess the next 2 rounds really are quite important, but the relationship between team, Yamaha and rider is fantastic. We're all in such admiration of the way he's come back from that injury and the heart he's shown to get back here.